Hey guys, today in the shop I put together a Volkswagen engine run stand. So I wanted to do a video on an engine run stand. I know there's quite a few videos out there already on this subject, but just wanted to show you how I set mine up. And we're going to do that for this engine right here. This is a 1600cc dual port intake with a doghouse oil cooler, and then I've got a vacuum advanced distributor and a 38mm 2-barrel carburetor, and it's going to go into this car. This is a 71 Super Beetle convertible that I've been restoring lately, and so we've got that motor built for this car. And I'll be doing some more videos on this car as I go along with the restoration. So let's get to it and do the run stand. So for this engine run stand, I'm just using a Craftsman toolbox, the roll cart part of the toolbox, just to set the motor on. And you can use something like this, or you could use a workbench, or even the floor for that matter. But what I wouldn't recommend is using one of your typical VW engine stands. These are great for building your long block, but anything other than that, like a fully dressed out engine, is really just too, in my mind, it's just too heavy for these stands. And then on top of that, you're gonna start it up and run it. So, and then just to beef it up a little bit, what I've done is I've put a, if you can see it, I've put a 1/2-inch sheet of plywood here, because the top of the cart is just it's really kind of weak. So just to beef it up a little bit to support the weight of the motor, I put the plywood in there. And then also you can see I've added a couple of pieces of wood to set the motor on, and for that it's just to keep the weight of the motor directly off of the heat exchangers. Just a personal preference of my own.
Giddy up.
Okay, for your engine run stand, what you're going to need in order to mount the starter is either a transmission or just a transmission case. And this is one I picked up at a swap meet. I went to the Buck Show in Fredericksburg, and a guy had this like it is, so I grabbed it solely for my engine run stand. But when I got it home, I realized it was a 6-volt transmission. So what I'm doing here, because I'm putting it on a car with a 12-volt flywheel, I got to grind this out some so that it'll fit correctly. And some of your places where the flywheel will scrape are right here where the bolt holes are. So these are key places to grind this out so that your flywheel will fit in there and spin properly. Just grind it out, test fit it, regrind, and just keep doing that until you get it right. And then the last thing on this is you want to make sure you've got the correct starter bushing in there. So again, I'm switching over and using 12-volt, so I've got a 12-volt starter bushing in here. And as you can see, I've already got my clutch and pressure plate on there, but you can leave that off for this. if you want, just have the flywheel on there. So we'll go ahead and bolt this on. And I like to go ahead and put in all 4 of the bolts for this, just to make it like it would be in the car. So you got a 17 millimeter bolt up here, and then on the bottom on either side is a 17 millimeter nut.
Mom, get my nuts! Get my nut!
Next we'll put the starter on. And then for this one you have a bolt that's got kind of a, I don't know, half moon shaped head, and it slides right in here, and then it fits like that on the starter to keep it from rotating when you're tightening it up. And these are all 17 millimeter nuts and bolts. Okay, so the tranny case is on, starter's on. So what I have here for the fuel tank is just a piece of angle iron. And what I did is I drilled 2 holes to match the bolt pattern on the side of this. And so we'll put this on here, and then I'll use this to hang my fuel tank. So for this startup, I'm not going to use a fuel pump, neither a manual or electronic. So I'm just going to hang this fuel tank to be a little bit above the carburetor, so that, you know, I don't know, maybe the gravity flow will help it feed the carb. So we'll hang this up here.
So now that the gas tank is mounted, what's next?
I need to connect my fuel line. All right, so we'll finish the fuel connection. It's always good to have a filter in there. Okay. Now we need a fresh battery. We got a battery here, and then for the connections, you're going to need a ground wire to run from your battery to somewhere on the motor, and it's just a good idea to go ahead and use the transmission case to do that. So we'll get the ground wire connected. And then you're going to need a positive wire. So this will go from your positive on the battery over to the starter solenoid. Let me scooch in a little closer. Then you're also going to need a hot wire to go from the pos on the battery over to the coil. So I'll go ahead and hook that up. And basically I just got a wire, and I put a little clip on one end for the coil, and then the ring style terminal for the battery cable.
What kind of gauge wire would you recommend?
Usually 14 to 16 is fine, will do fine. Keep in mind, when you got everything connected, this one is hot, so just be careful where you put it. And then to start it, I've got one of these starter buttons, and basically this will go. You'll connect one end of this to your starter solenoid. And then the other one goes on the hot on the battery. Just like so. Okay. So now we've got power to the engine. But what I want to do next is first I want to check my oil pressure, and then I'm going to hook it up so I can do my static timing on the distributor. All right, to first check oil pressure, we're going to disconnect the coil wire from the distributor just so we don't have any spark. And then I'm going to take this clip from the positive on the battery and run this to the positive on the coil. And then we'll take my test light and we'll also connect this to the positive side of the coil. and then we're going to touch it here on the oil sending unit. And you can see the light turns on. So I'm going to turn the motor over, and then once the oil pressure builds up, then the light should turn off. Just like that. So now I know I got oil pressure. So the next thing we'll do is set the static timing on the distributor. All right, to set the static timing on this, we'll pop the distributor cap. And what we want to do is put the engine on the #1 cylinder. And so with this type of distributor, I know that #1 is pointing in this direction. As a matter of fact, you can see a little mark right there on the distributor that shows you where #1 is. So I'm going to turn this around. Let me take this brush plate off. Let me get in there and get this screw out.
I can't see the mark with the camera.
Oh, that's okay. So we're just going to turn this around to #1, and what we want to do is set this at 8 degrees before top dead center. And then this particular pulley has a dial on it, so I'll set it at 8 degrees on the advice of Easy Jeezy. You might know Easy Jeezy from the VDub videos.
Hey, you're out in the garage with Easy Jeezy.
So we'll just go over here, bump it up to 8 degrees before top dead center on #1. And then what we'll do is take and loosen the clamp on the distributor. Then I'm going to turn it clockwise just a little bit to get it off of #1. My power back to the coil. And this time I'm going to use my test light again. And I'm going to connect it to the negative side of the coil. And then ground this out on the carb. Just like that. And then I'm going to take the distributor and rotate it counterclockwise back to #1. And what I'm looking for is for this light to come on. Right there. So now I'm set. That's my static timing set on #1. And right there, cylinder #1 is ready to fire. So I'll leave it there. Tighten that back down. So we'll put this cap back on and connect my coil wire. Okay, so I got oil pressure. I've got my timing set. And now all I need to do is turn on the fuel, and you should be able to fire this thing off. Okay. So if you've just built your engine and you're running this for the first time, I've seen a lot of advice out there, but on the Bug Me videos with Rick Higgins, he suggests that you run it about 10 to 15 minutes and rev it as you're going along. Just rev it, no matter how the timing sounds or the carburetor's working, just get it started and rev it for about 15 minutes. So as you can see, I probably got a little bit of tweaking to do on the carburetor. Kind of sounded like it doesn't want to idle just yet. But that's the initial startup and how to get everything going and then from there you can mess with your timing and your carburation. Well, hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. That's my engine version of an engine run stand. If you liked it, go ahead and subscribe. Also, check out my Facebook page and maybe follow me on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.